I'm Edith. Standing in the cold morning air, watching Alex drive away, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. It had been a year since the old woman, Amelia, passed away, and so much had changed. The Quinnell Rainforest, once a place of mystery, now felt like a home filled with warmth and purpose. Amelia was a kind, hearted woman in her late 70s. She had spent most of her life in Tacoma, but her children, Henry and Lily, had long since grown distant. Henry was a 45-year-old construction business owner, always busy with work and seemingly more concerned about his own success. Lily, 42, worked in an office and only visited her mother when she needed something. They were raised in a well-to-do family, but their parents' indulgence had made them self-centered. Amelia's husband, a strict but loving man, had passed away years ago, leaving her alone to face the world. I was married to Henry, but our relationship had always been strained. I was the only one who truly cared for Amelia, visiting her regularly and offering her the companionship she so desperately needed. The day Amelia passed away was a turning point in my life. I was sitting by her hospital bed, holding her weakening hand as the steady beeping of the monitor faded. It was 3:42 p.m. when the flat line sounded. Henry never showed up, and Lily didn't even call. I was alone in that cold hospital room, surrounded by the sounds of other families offering comfort to one another, but I felt no warmth. A nurse, with a face full of exhaustion and genuine kindness, approached me. She handed me a slightly wrinkled envelope and said, "She asked us repeatedly to make sure this goes to you after now." For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to open it. The hum of the fluorescent lights and the lingering echo of the flatline filled the quiet room. Finally, with trembling fingers, I tore it open. Inside was an old silver key and a slip of paper with an address deep in the Washington forest. Underneath, Amelia had written, "They never loved me. Let them learn what it means to be forgotten." I left the hospital in a daze. The world outside seemed muted, as if every sound had been wrapped in cotton. When I got home, Henry called, asking me to pick up milk and bread as if nothing had happened. I told him, "Your mother died today at 3:42. His response was cold and dismissive. "Well, I had meetings. We'll figure out the arrangements later. Just get home when you can." That night, the house felt colder than ever. I realized that my life had changed forever. The next morning, I followed the address on the paper. The forested highway led me away from Tacoma, through winding back roads and past misty evergreens. As I drove deeper into the forest, the pavement gave way to a rough, overgrown path. The trees were thick, draped in moss, and their shadows danced on the ground. Finally, I reached a small clearing. There was a faded cabin, tucked beneath towering firs and wild roses. The paint was worn, but the structure stood firm, as if it had been waiting for me. I stepped outside, breathing in the cool, damp air filled with the scent of cedar and rain. The key in my pocket felt warm in my hand, and the lock turned smoothly. Inside, the cabin was filled with the scent of lavender, dust, and old wood. Sunlight filtered through the clouded windows, casting a soft haze over the shelves lined with worn books. On the kitchen table, there was another envelope addressed to Amelia's attorney, Mrs. Grace Thompson. I called Mrs. Thompson, and she told me that the reading of the will couldn't proceed unless Henry and Lily were present. That evening, when Henry and Lily came home, I tried to explain, but they laughed it off. Henry said, "Mom lived off Social Security and complaints. There's nothing to read." Lily rolled her eyes and scoffed. The day of the will reading arrived. We gathered in Mrs. Thompson's office in downtown Tacoma. The conference room was too bright for the occasion. Henry and Lily bickered about parking before sitting down impatiently. Two of Amelia's old friends, Mrs. Rose and Mrs. Violet, sat nearby, looking nervous. Mrs. Thompson began reading the will. "To my son, Henry, I leave forgiveness and nothing else." Henry's smirk vanished, and a stunned laugh escaped him. To my daughter, Lily, I leave the wedding ring she once admired and tried to take. May it remind her that promises still matter. Lily's face turned pale. To my dear friends, Rose and Violet, I leave financial gifts in recognition of your years of loyalty and kindness. The two women exchanged teary glances. And to Edith, I leave everything else. The cabin property, all remaining savings, personal belongings, and the insurance benefits. The room fell silent. Henry jumped to his feet and shouted, "This is a joke." She was confused. Someone manipulated her. Lily joined in, saying they would take it to court. But Mrs. Thompson was prepared. She presented a psychiatric evaluation that proved Amelia was fully competent when she signed the will. She also had a video recording where Amelia explained her decisions. Henry and Lily's attempts to contest the will were in vain. The court dismissed their case, and they were ordered to pay the legal costs. News of the dismissal spread quickly through Tacoma. Henry's business began to fall apart as banks withdrew loan offers and clients pulled out of contracts. Lily faced social isolation as her neighbors and co-workers distanced themselves from her. I moved into the cabin, finding solace in the quiet wilderness. I spent days sorting through Amelia's journals and letters. I learned about her lonely life, how she set the table for holidays even though she knew no one would come, how she called Henry on Thanksgiving and got his voicemail year after year. Near the bottom of a crate, I found a letter from Amelia's late husband, telling her not to reward those who had abandoned her. I realized that Amelia's actions were not out of bitterness, but a search for justice. She had been forgotten for too long. One day, I decided to turn the cabin into a place for people like Amelia, those who felt forgotten. With the help of Mrs. Thompson, I went through the process of registering it as a nonprofit. Neighbors from Lake Quinnell helped me repair and renovate the cabin. When the House of Hope opened, it was filled with people who had once lived in isolation. Widows, elderly veterans, and lonely neighbors came together, sharing stories and laughter. I felt Amelia's presence everywhere, in the sunlight on the walls and the scent of lavender. On the first anniversary of Amelia's death, we held a small memorial outside the cabin. People shared memories of her, some tender, some humorous. I stepped forward last. I didn't need to say much because everything I wanted to say was already in the air, in the hearts of the people gathered there. Later that night, I sat at my writing desk, looking at my manuscript, a book shaped from Amelia's journals, her letters, her grief, and her quiet resilience. Before going to bed, I walked out to the old oak behind the cabin. I touched its rough bark and whispered, "You weren't forgotten, and now neither am I." The wind carried my words into the evergreen canopy, where they belonged.